I used to walk the streets of New York at night crying. I'd be crying so hard that people would come up to me and say, "Did a death happen in your family?"
What do you think it was rescuing you from emotionally?
I think because I was able to not be myself. That was one of the reasons why I liked acting, because I wasn't myself. I didn't have to be myself. I guess feeling my feelings or
Hmm.
or interacting with the reality that was my life.
How do you think you managed to keep your heart open instead of becoming hardened by those experiences?
I can say this. It's almost like every bone in my body resisted feeling bitter or upset, and I really rely on my joy and love of people. My mission in life is dreams fulfilled. Not just my dreams, but everyone else's dreams that come in my contact.
Hello and welcome to Ego is Here. Today I'm joined by Joan Baker, voice artist, performer, educator, and co-founder of SOVAS. We will be talking about identity, resilience, transformation, and what it truly means to find your voice. Hello, John.
First of all, I loved that intro. Everything you just said, what we're going to talk about is me.
I
What I think
know.
about, I live it all the time. So you nailed it, Anna. You nailed it.
First of all, how are you?
You know, I'm good. I always say I'm managing, I'm always managing, like multiple plates. So even though I'm doing great, Rudy and I just moved to Florida. We are in the
Mhm.
Orlando area, and we happen to have lived in New York for 46 years. We just didn't meet each other until 1994. But altogether, we both lived in New York for 46 years before we came to Orlando, where we wanted to get a home as opposed to
Mm,
an apartment, or a condo. So that's what brought us here. And, it was hard,
mm.
um, especially because life is so different here. One of the things that's different is you have to drive. And when you're in New York, you don't have to drive.
Yes.
So, although I have a license and all, I'm not, I haven't been a driver in all these years. Rudy is someone that he's really great at driving. He's been driving for a long time, but whenever we go somewhere, he's always the driver. Now I'm driving. And and it is challenging. At nighttime, I kind of have nightmares a little bit about it because I'm not used to it yet. And the nightmares are like, hopefully, no weird things happen, in the car while
Yeah.
you're driving type stuff. But I do feel really happy, and I also feel like this is a transformation. A
Mm.
46-year completion in one area, and now I'm in a completely different new area, and it's already been wonderful, I have to say. It's already
Yes.
been wonderful. So, I'm doing good.
I'm
Thank
happy.
you for
I'm
asking.
happy. I'm happy. John, take me back. Take me back to your childhood. Growing up biracial, when did
Mm.
you first become aware that the world was looking at you differently?
You know, I I guess I've always known unconsciously,
Mm,
because I was someone as a kid that I would notice how other people were being treated versus myself, and there was always a huge difference. One was full of love and hope, and joy and like ease. And
mhm,
then somehow dealing with me was the opposite. And so I noticed that right away, but what I didn't really key in on was it that it had anything to do with me being biracial
mm.
or being black. I didn't know it was that. I just thought there was something wrong with me as a person, as a human being. And so because of that, I became the ultimate people pleaser in dealing with people. I wanted to be loved, but I also wanted the freedom to love people. I'm
Mm.
someone that's a people person. I
Yes.
really thrive when I'm around groups of people, even individuals too, but I'm saying I really am a people person at heart.
Mhm.
So I really noted that there was something in my sphere that was going on that wasn't normally going on. I did grow up in an all white community, and my dad, being white, was able to buy the house in the area that we lived in. And there was no other blacks until I was in eighth grade.
Mhm.
And I started living there when I was 3 years old. So we were the only family that was black, but also biracial, a parent, that was white, a parent that was black. So
Mhm.
it did really create a lot of chaos in a community that was supposed to be a utopia open community. So, I grew up really combating racism and combating people's fears that they would project onto me about mixed race.
Mhm.
Kids would tell me, which, I learned everything from people's reaction to me. I didn't go into the world thinking these things. It was people's reactions to me and also what people would say to me. So people would say to me, it's not just that you're black, you're not just black and you're not white. And that's worse than if you were black because somehow I'm mixing
Yes.
the races, right?
Mm.
And so the treatment was pretty bad for many, many years. And I used to cry myself to sleep because I just thought, the hell is wrong with me that is creating all this ruckus everywhere I go?
Mm.
Now, I also did have friends and I wasn't antisocial. It's just that I was coming up with these things all the time because I wasn't antisocial and I did have a lot of friends. And again, I based a lot of my friendships on how far I would go to be their friend with
Mhm.
certain people. Um, I just wanted to be understood, without really knowing those words. Also, too, when I was very young, I already knew I wanted to be an actress. I already knew I wanted to be a dancer, and I
Mm.
knew I wanted to be a humanitarian. I don't know if I thought the word humanitarian, I don't know what I would have called it when I was 5 or 4, but I knew that again, my love of people, I knew that I really wanted to be of impact with people. And so I really had to prove that. Not so much to myself because I already knew that I was capable of certain things, but I had to prove to other people that I was worthy. And
Yes.
I never quite did. It never quite showed up, and that left an imprint with me.
You said that performing saved your childhood.
It did.
So, what do you think it was rescuing you from emotionally?
I think because I was able to not be myself. That was one of the reasons why I liked acting because I wasn't myself. I didn't have to be myself. I guess feeling my feelings
Mm.
or interacting with the reality that was my life that I didn't understand. I understood performing. I understood the platform where I got to give. I understood a platform where I could express joy, that I could make people laugh, cry, whatever it was.
Mhm.
And and because there was such, instinct around that and and preservation around that, I really shined. I mean, I ended up getting an agent, a major agent, when I was in 6th grade. I ended up being in a movie. I was on a television series. It it was a series that was extremely popular. It was a kids show, and it
Mhm.
was a variety show. And we did all kinds of things. We also wrote the material for the show for the first year I was on, and then the second year we had writers. But it was a kids show that was extremely popular. I loved that, and I felt like my dreams very early were coming true because I was so focused on kind of that platform, that performance aspect, that
Mhm.
I got people, liked me from it. In real life, I had to prove myself and I had to go out of my way to do it.
Yes, yes.
So there was a total difference. So in that sense, it saved my life. Also, I always wanted to be a performer. I don't know any other thoughts that I had about doing anything else. So I didn't know it was going to save me, but it did.
Mm-hmm. So it was like your safe zone performing.
Yeah, it was like a safe zone, but also the zone that I could really be what my spirit was really meant to be.
And it was your way of reclaiming power and visibility after
Yes,
feeling unseen or judged.
yes. I mean, there are some things in my life when I was young that I became very ashamed of, and it took me a long time to heal from it. And the shame comes from the fact that I felt like I had to go out of my way to have people like me and respond to me in a positive way because, again, I was the only one in the area that was Black.
Mm-hmm.
And not exactly knowing that that was the reason why I would get, all kinds of name calling. And even my friends that associated with me got called names, got letters in their lockers. I mean, it was definitely horrific, but there was some magical things in my childhood that I really relied on. But the shame had to do with, for example, I used to steal money from my dad
Mm-hmm.
to pay off people so that they would smile when I'd come to school, or they would be my friend when I'd see them in the mall, or that they'd think of me in a positive way.
Mm.
So it was kinda like the Peter Pan syndrome or, stealing from
Yes,
over
yes.
here to pay Peter over
Buying
here
love
type
in a
thing.
way, huh?
Yes. And
Mm.
so that created a lot of shame because I really loved my dad. My dad was also someone that was a savior in my childhood, although I wasn't very honest with my parents about what was going on with me
Mm.
because I was so embarrassed. And I was also embarrassed that they might think low of me because of all this weird chaos that was, kind of a constant.
Mm.
So I never really talked to them about any of this. I was just too embarrassed. So, um, my dad was someone that was naturally expressive towards me and really support I mean, both my parents really supported me, but I really took to my dad, and I ended up stealing from him, and not just once or twice. We're talking
Uh-huh.
a couple
Mhm.
years.
Mhm.
We're talking a couple years just so I could pay people to be my friend, because I
Yes.
thought there was no other way for me. I didn't think it would happen in a natural way.
Mm.
So that caused a lot of shame, the part that it couldn't happen in a natural way, but it also caused even more shame because I was stealing from someone that I truly loved.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle in a
Yeah,
way. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. And, I might have gotten some help had I told my parents, had I been open
Mhm.
about what was going on, but nobody was. You know, no one at that in the 60s and 70s were truly open with their parents about
Yes.
all kinds of things that may be
Mhm.
happening to them in the world. I just know that I was truly embarrassed, and I thought they'd think low of me because, again, I thought it was something wrong with me.
Yeah, unfortunately. John,
Yes.
why do you think painful childhood experiences become fuel for some people later in life while others are broken by them?
I think that's a great question, and what I say is I think, kind of a traumatic childhood could absolutely break you and break your spirit. There's no question about it, but I think if you happen to be the type of person that goes about whatever it takes to heal that past, I think it can become a powerful tool
Mhm.
for your life and the future. So I'll give you an example that people have given me that know about my childhood. And they'll say to me things like, it's ironic that you come from a childhood that people did not, dismissed you, didn't think anything about you. And then you create a platform that acknowledges and honors people.
Mhm.
And at first, I didn't see that. But, once that was brought to my attention more than once, I felt like, yeah, that is really ironic. But it comes out of, again, me doing whatever I can to heal the wounds, the pains, the little girls that are inside
Mm,
me. And to deal with that on a regular basis, I think magic comes out of that, or creation comes out of that, or naturally doing something with great impact in the world. But I think if you're not looking at those things and you go through the world, I think it just there's definitely problems that get created from that. And
mm.
I mean, we have many examples of people that are deeply wounded and haven't done any work around it,
Yes,
and what they're doing and how they are in the world. I mean, we have plenty of examples, especially here in America, of that.
yes. But the environment as well plays a big part in someone's
Yes.
healing, right?
Yes, the environment, yeah, just like it's played a part when I was growing up, the environment and the way society looked at someone like me.
Uh-huh,
There was no boundary. I don't care if I was a kid. There was absolutely no boundaries with the essence of society around me, walking and breathing around. So, I you normally people kind of have the love of adults because you're a kid or whatever, but not
uh-huh,
projected hatred and fear. Like, that's very unusual, and it definitely stood out, and I definitely noticed it, and it definitely didn't break my spirit, but it definitely hurt me for many, many years. I feel like I've lost out. In terms of as an adult, I felt like I lost out on many opportunities because a part of me was afraid of them because of what I was carrying from the past. And,
uh-huh,
even though I've been working on these issues for many decades now, I still came into my childhood from my childhood into, New York, into a very intense situation. I was on scholarship. I got a scholarship at Alvin Ailey, which
uh-huh,
is a incredible, dance, company, but and with a lot of history. But I was in their school on scholarship, and again, I did not feel worthy. I showed up small.
uh-huh,
If I felt intimidated very easily, although I still focused on the craft. I had no choice because of the way the school was set up. I
uh-huh,
truly focused on the craft, but outside of it, I was very intimidated. Um, I got very shy. So my plight has always seems to have been to break out of my own, shyness, my own fears, my own whatever I'd been carrying around that's accumulated, that however a little girl would think about that,
uh-huh,
I still was carrying around when I moved to New York. It took decades before I felt like I could be myself and to be fully self-expressed, which I feel there is nothing else in this world but to be fully self-expressed as a human being.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
I think that's one of the most important things in life.
Yes. And embrace your authenticity, right?
Yes, especially if you don't know what that is right off the bat, because you have so many, you have so much resistance against being told you're nothing,
Mhm,
that you don't belong here, that your very, being uh, deserves abuse, be spoken to any way you want. I mean, there was a lot to work through. When I was in my 20s in New York, although I had an intense scholarship that called for me to be in classes 5 times a day, 5 days a week, if I wanted to be a dancer with Alvin Ailey, and I'm not even including nighttime classes. Um, it calls for you to be at 100%, and I
uh-huh,
was lucky if I was at 40% on the inside. But, in my 20s, I used to walk the streets of New York at night crying because I felt like I was in so much pain and I felt like I was in such a box. I just did not know how to get out of it. And sometimes I'd be on, there's stoops in New York City where there'd be staircases into a brownstone, and I'd be
uh-huh.
sitting, on the Upper West Side where I lived. I'd be sitting on a stoop, and I'd be crying so hard that people would come up to me and say, "Did a death happen in your family?"
It's unbelievable.
I mean, it didn't break my spirit, but it definitely slowed me down, and it definitely got me into a healing situation. I met an incredible healer at that time when I was about 27.
Mm-hmm.
And astrologically, when you're 27, it's your Saturn return, if anyone knows anything about astrology. And things happen in your Saturn return. You can get married, you can get divorced, it it can manifest, but in a very critical way.
Mm-hmm.
So I met a healer, and I met the healer in a very odd way. First of all, she was a genius. She was my kind of therapist, guru, healer
Mm-hmm.
for
Mm-hmm.
about 15 years after that, because she was so powerful mentally. She had so much um, ways of healing and tools to use, that when I'm with a teacher that is infinite like that, I don't leave them unless she retires, or,
Yes.
because I'm constantly learning and constantly, reevaluating and constantly going out in life and seeing how it manifests for me with a
Mm-hmm.
kind of a new perspective. But anyway, I was, of course, dancing. I wasn't at Ailey anymore, but I was in a dance situation at a
Mm-hmm.
dance school that I loved. And this woman in dance class said, "Oh, I'm doing this workshop, and agents and stuff will come." And she said, I would love for you to be an usher. And at the time, if someone asked me to do anything, I'd always say no. Again, part of me was like shut
Mm-hmm.
down. I'd always say no because I was afraid. So when she said this to me, I was about to say no, and this voice came in my head and said, "Do it, your life will change." But very clear. And it wasn't me. And I never felt that before. And I started to say no, and I went, yes. And so I showed up and I met this movie star named Raul Julia,
Mm-hmm.
who he has now passed away, but he was an extraordinary actor. And we were having a conversation. I met two people that night. Raul Julia was one of them. And he said to me, he said, "You're going to meet your guru." Because I guess I was talking about healing, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And he said, "You're going to meet your guru." And he said, I think he said she, but he said she will be in a penthouse. And the other person I met that night brought me to his home later, like a couple days later, because we became friends, and he was extraordinary in this workshop. I met his wife. His wife was a psychic healer, therapist, and they lived in a penthouse. I kid you. And she became my therapist for 15 years. She was absolutely extraordinary, and she's now retired, but absolutely extraordinary. And some of the most profound healing happened with her.
John, what did you learn? What did you understand about yourself that you weren't aware of?
Well, this is the kind of work that we did. And by the way, my life to me, and that there's the different areas in your life. There's
Mm-hmm.
career, there's money, there's relationships, there's the different areas.
Yes.
Every single area in my life was completely shut down except for the area of friends. That I had friends in abundance. But
Mm-hmm.
every other area was a constant resistant, like life handing me lemons all the time. So I would say that they were shut down. So what she did was, through our healing and the different kind of ways of healing certain issues.
Yeah.
So I'll give you an example. So she would take out the tarot cards. Now, I wasn't necessarily someone that believed them or not believed in them, but this is how she would work. And she would detect resistance in the subconscious around,
Mhm.
let's just say, in the area of career.
Yes.
And so she would verbalize it. I'm not necessarily thinking anything, but she would verbalize it because she would figure it out through the cards. And then we would figure out a way to heal it. So it might be in her office, or it might be I take some kind of seminar somewhere that focuses on, resistance
Mhm.
to the self equaling relationship, but certain aspects of relationship. Like I wanted to be free enough that I could pursue getting an agent. But what was holding me back wasn't necessarily the pursuit of it. It was kind of this, the self, I don't know if it's self-hatred, but, the self-resistance
Mhm.
to doing the
And
steps or pay
self-doubt,
yeah,
maybe.
but also, like, paying my dues or, you know, um, something I wouldn't have thought of, or because it's very easy, especially in show business, to go, "I'm here and I wanna be there, and something magical will happen. They'll see who I am, and then they'll hire me," type thing.
Mhm, mhm,
And it doesn't really work that way, but it certainly didn't work that way with me as an adult. So, detecting the different areas, like I had a fear of rejection, so I worked on that. Um, I had, kind of like I was so shy, I felt odd paying my dues, in terms of not financially necessarily, but paying my dues in terms of taking classes that I need to take in order to create a reel that I needed to show an agent or whatever it may be. So I would work on career, but I'd also work sometimes on me and my feelings towards my mom, which I definitely had feelings around my mom, as I guess most mother and daughters can have. But I definitely had feelings around my mom. So she'd help me clear the cobwebs there. And
yes.
whatever that took to do that, we would do. So after 10 years of being with her, she was my matron of honor at my wedding with Rudy, um,
Um,
because she was so instrumental in helping me connect to a real soulmate, a real partner in life. I also worked a lot with affirmations at the time, and affirmations and she was brilliant at creating affirmations. So they weren't just kind of like, I want to have a lot of money, they were affirmations that really dealt with whatever the resistance within me was showing up, especially over and over again. She would create an affirmation for me, and I would look in the mirror twice a day, morning and night, and I would do affirmations, and you could see the breakthroughs in my life. But these affirmations were not just one-liners. They would deal with the negative aspect of what you were addressing, and then it would come up with the positive one that you wanted to see happen. So I was really learning how to manifest and doing it from a place that's um, real and positive, and the person I saw myself really to be without all these, clamps on me. So I really learned a lot about manifesting from my real authentic self. And that was the value and the beauty, and I will never forget it. I really feel like it is the reason why, I know it was the reason why that I was able to spread my wings in a certain way.
mhm,
And um and my life did change. My career did change. The different areas of my life did open up, but it was because I was at the base of it, not necessarily life. Life may
mhm,
have been reflecting it back to me. One of the reasons why I kept going is because I never saw anything else for myself in
mhm,
life but being in showbiz. I never saw anything else. Also, I mean, of course, there were times that I thought about quitting, but not in a serious way. I only thought about being in show business and thriving. So I had that. And I think you need that because what I have found in show business is, and if you want to be successful, you have to be the last man standing in your circle. It's once you start to drop out, it's over. But the
mhm.
people that tend to win is because they've gone through, the fire and
Yes.
paid their dues, because we're in a dues paying industry. And they've paid their dues. They're literally the last man standing in their circle.
Mhm,
And that's why they say it takes 10 years. It can take longer, but it takes 10 years, to be kind of a asset in show business, or, a star, whatever you want to call it.
yes.
But it's because you've paid your dues and you're the last one standing, and you've gone through the fire and you've come out of it, and you've come out of it learning lessons, not blaming things,
Mm, yeah.
right?
That's a different
So
mentality. Yes,
yes,
yes.
you're really learning lessons that will, keep you on the carpet ride. It makes it worth it. But if you're interpreting what's going on in a negative way and against you, you probably are going to drop out. You probably are going to feel bitter. You probably, but if you realize that you're learning lessons, and
Mm.
by the way, you will learn them in any other industry. It just might not show up the way it does in show business because you can't kind of hide. You can't hide behind corporate. You can't
Yes,
kind of
yes.
hide.
Mm.
You are the product,
Mhm.
right? If I'm selling this phone and you don't like it, it's not personal to me. But what we're selling is us, our voices, our, looks, our craft. So it kind of is much more personal than me selling this phone and you don't
Of
like it.
course, of course.
So I'm not interpreting like, oh, you don't like me. I need to get a better product, but it's not me like it
Mm.
is in show
It's not
business. So
personal, yes.
yeah, it's not personal and it's so easy to take it personal and then to kind of go into a tailspin around it.
Mhm.
I was just talking to someone about someone that had gone into a kind of a depression because this person thought they were going to get a scholarship from this institution. This was in acting world, in an institution, and they paid for the course, but part of the course was you had to take another course and pay for it, and that's where they thought they were going to get a scholarship. And I said to the person that was telling me this, I said, "But you knew in advance you were getting you would have to pay for this course, right?" "Yeah, but I just thought, oh, they'll give me a scholarship because they
Mhm.
know that I can't afford it." But no, that's
It doesn't work that way, no.
it doesn't work that way. And so I think sometimes in show business, there tends to be this kind of fantastical thinking about yourself, or things like, I'm special, that won't happen for me, or I'm special, that won't show up like that for me. It does for them, but not for me. It doesn't work that way.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, the more you think, or the more depth that you feel you're special and things should show up that way in life, the more those lessons are going to come up. And you may misinterpret it as something else. But the
Mm.
more real you can be, the more common sense you can have about yourself. The more common
Sometimes it's
sense
hard, huh, to
it
have that
is.
common sense.
It's a challenge.
Yeah,
It
it
is a
is.
challenge. It's so easy to interpret, this I'm being bashed by life, or I'm
Mm.
being bashed, these people don't understand me, or I'm being cheated in some way. And I think it's more healthy to really turn it around and figure out what is the lesson that I might be missing here. Boy,
Do you
it will
believe that there's always a lesson
I
behind
do.
the things that happen
I
to us?
think we're in
Yes.
school when we're on Earth. I think this is a school. And there are lessons that we are constantly learning, no matter how tiresome they may be.
And why do they keep repeating? That's the
Yeah.
thing.
Well, I think the reason why they keep repeating, and sometimes in ways that you're not maybe connecting, I think it repeats because you haven't really learned the lesson, right? And and it's an opportunity to actually look at it differently so that you learn the lesson.
But how easy is that? You know?
I honestly think in general it depends on what it is that keeps repeating over and over. Um, for example, there's relationships, right?
Oh,
Especially relationships with men. And so you always hear people talk about the same guy shows up, but he looks different, but it's the same.
oh yes.
Always the
Yes.
same,
Hmm.
right? But see, it's very easy to blame men as opposed to perhaps, why am I attracted to men that are emotionally unavailable if that's what the pattern is? Why am I attracted to that? It's not life putting that in your path. It's what your radar is attracted to because your radar thinks, oh, he'll make me happy. For whatever reason,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
think this emotionally unavailable guy will make you happy. And also what you tend to do is when someone comes in like that, you look at him like, he won't hurt me, or it won't be the same. He's nicer, or, however you're interpreting that.
Hmm.
And the truth is, there's a lesson for you to learn. And you can even be articulate about it, as opposed to it ends with, oh, there's a lesson here. Okay, but what is the lesson? Right? That's where you want to get into. And
Uh-huh.
once you really get what that is, that emotionally unattainable guy will stop showing up, i.e., you will stop being attracted to that guy. And that I can relate to business as well. There's
Mhm.
patterns in business too. And they all seem kind of like how, there's a reason why this happened, but then it stops there. But actually, you have to articulate what it is that you keep being attracted to or you keep calling into your life.
But
Why is that
those,
necessary?
yeah, those patterns are based on our beliefs, right?
Yes,
And sometimes it's really hard to break, those beliefs
I agree.
because we're programmed to
I
have
agree.
those beliefs.
But you can also break the program.
Mm,
I also think it
yes.
may take a witness to help you do that, as
That's
opposed to
easier, I
yeah,
believe. Yes.
as
Yes.
opposed to thinking you have to do it all on your own. I think if you have someone that's just, more ahead of the road in terms of their wisdom, that it can really truly make a difference. I really am speaking from my own life when I say this. It's
Mhm.
not like I read it in a book, although I've read plenty of books.
Yes.
But why am I attracted to men that reject me? Let's just say. Well, I realize for myself,
Mhm.
when I ask these questions, I realize, you know what? If I really was in a relationship with a man that was completely available, I would be shy. I would not show up as much. So, in other words, that person that has that issue is actually reflecting back to me my issue. The
Mhm.
only difference is it's passive with me and it's not with them. That's the difference.
Yes.
So they are a mirror into my unconscious as to what's going on. It's not a mystery then.
Mhm.
It's not just, oh, there's a reason why, but you have no idea.
Yes.
So there's certain things that I have figured out and then got put to the test because let's just say we're talking about men. And let's just say being uh I kept being attracted to men that weren't available, and I realized I'm actually not the available one, and they're just reflecting that back to me.
Mhm.
So it gives me an opportunity to work with that as opposed to being a mystery and blaming them.
Yes.
So it's easier to move on when you realize you're letting go of the lesser for the greater to come in because you now realize what the issue is. And it's not them. It's not them. There are plenty of men out here that are
Yes. Yes.
extraordinary,
Yes.
right?
Um, John, did you ever want like traditional Hollywood fame?
Yes,
Yes.
I did. I did. I mean, I didn't really know anything else as a kid. I was someone that I watched award shows, the Oscars, the Emmys, like clockwork every year since I was a kid, including the fact that my parents and my brothers would have to leave the room so I could just focus and be glued on the award shows, right? So I got a lot of my ideas from magazines in terms of glamour and movie star and award shows. I really felt when I was watching award shows, not only was it people's talents that were on display and being appreciated and cultivated, but there was also the fashion around it, which I've always loved fashion. So there was always fashion around it. But ultimately it was because people were so happy around dreams coming true.
Hmm.
And that's what drew me to things like award shows or being acknowledged. Um, there's a lot of work that goes into whatever you want to do in life, but in show business, there's a lot of work behind the scenes. There is pain, there is suffering, there is,
Yes.
trying to get underneath something or, there's work. So when you get acknowledged for it and there's nothing else like it in terms of career. Now, you don't want to rest on your laurels, of course, but I'm saying that it should inspire you to keep moving, to become deeper, to become more authentic with yourself. Like it should
Uh-huh.
inspire that. I come from a childhood where I'm not seen. So I know that that's painful. when you're not seen and not acknowledged, just for being, just not necessarily because you did something great, but just because you see other people being seen and acknowledged, but you're
Yeah.
not. So there is a pain around that. And when you get acknowledged for the hard work that you're doing and you're on a stage and you have this award and you can speak from your heart and you can thank people in your life or, people that have, supported you. That's
Yeah.
an incredible opportunity that not everyone gets.
Yes,
And it's life changing. It's life changing.
it is.
Right.
John, tell me what drew you to voice acting?
Actually was an accident. See, when it's only been recently that people like I coach and teach, right? It's
Hmm.
only been recently that young people will say, I've always wanted to be a voice actor. That didn't exist 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It didn't exist.
Hmm.
Most people got into voice acting or voiceover by accident. So I got into voiceover by accident. And that is because no one knew what to do with my look on camera. Just being mixed race, people had a hard time casting me. They tell me all the time, "You're great, but we don't know what to do with you," because there wasn't a box. And see, in show business, there's always, typecasting. There's always,
Yes, yes.
you're a woman, you have brown hair, you're between this age and that age, you may
Hmm.
weigh this to that. And so I did not easily fit into a box. So, no one's going to deal with that. They're going to move on.
Hmm.
So another aspect of being overlooked. So on camera, I had a very hard time. I kept training and all, but because I love acting, but um, in terms of being cast, it was always difficult. Now, with the younger generations, my type actually has a box now.
Yes.
And it's called racially ambivalent. That's the box it's called. Not my words, not my choice of a box name,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
that's the name. So now my type, and especially in the younger generations, are now exist or now being acknowledged as a type. That was not happening. So there was constantly trying to break through this barrier,
Yes.
right? So I got into voiceover in the sense by accident because I was bound and determined to have a career in the industry. And I had tried for decades to get an on camera agent, although I got a couple of freelancers when I was younger, but I fell into it because and without realizing what voiceover was or that it was a career even, was that I got asked to do a cable show. And now this cable show was not like cable today. This was like kind of like the light swinging, with the camera and the host, right? And so my managers said they want you to come in and report on the nightlife in New York because I did go out in the nightlife in New York. And so I thought, how great. I remember even talking about Madonna. Like, so what I did was I decided, I don't know why, I decided I was going to do a character voice and talk about the nightlife. And I was wearing like a very sexy outfit, but I had a really kind of kooky voice. I don't know why, but I did that. And afterwards, I got a lot of attention from it. But at the same time, in Backstage Magazine, I saw an ad for voiceover and it said cartoon regular voice. And it was a teacher. And I thought, I just got done doing a character voice, right? I just got done doing that. And I thought, let me try this. I did 4 lessons with her in a demo reel, and almost immediately 3 top agents, and I showed up in person with my demo reel. 3 top agents were interested in signing me, and I went with one of them that I thought matched my energy. So it happened by accident. I didn't train necessarily for it. I had 4 lessons and did a demo reel because I was already kind of there. But what's interesting is, and this was in 1991, and I got signed to my agency on Valentine's Day, 1991. So that was really special to me, extra.
Oh.
But I remember one of the agents said to me, "Oh, you're going to have to change your demo reel." I was like, "What?" And he said,
What?
"Yeah, don't worry, you'll do it with jobs." And I was like, "Oh." So my 3-minute demo reel, which is unheard of today, it would literally be a 1 minute, maybe 1 minute 5 demo reel today. But I did a 3-minute demo reel, and every single spot was a different character and character voice, except for a couple of my regular speaking voice.
Unbelievable.
That caught the attention. But I like to tell this particular story because it really was a miracle. So, the very first top agency, I was dropping off my demo. I did nothing, like I didn't mail anything. I always showed up in person. Why, by the way, you need to show up as much as you
Uh-huh.
can, 100% in person. It's not always possible, but that should be the first instinct because people become ingratiated with you when you show up, especially if you're an interesting, fun person, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
So I had my demo reel. This
Hmm.
is before I got signed. So I went to the first agency, top agency, and I'm in the elevator, and there's this very distinguished man in the elevator. And we started talking a little bit because we were going all the way up. And I said to him, "What do you do?" And he said he was an announcer. He was a voiceover announcer. I
Hmm.
said, "Oh." And I said, "Are you going to, this agency?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "I've been with them for, many, many, many years." And I said, "Oh, so am I." I said, "I'm going to be dropping off my demo reel." And he kind of shook his head and I said, "Do you think they'll listen to it?" And he went, and
Hmm.
I was like, "Okay." And I was thinking, I'm still going to drop it off. As soon as the elevator door opened, he was out the door, right? He was gone. And it took a while to walk to where the reception was. By the time I got there, an agent came out and said, "I'd love to meet with you." I said, "Really?" And he said, I don't remember the man's name, but he said, "Bob referred you." Stunned. And he
Oh,
waved and wherever he was doing at the agency he went to do, I sat down with the agent. He listened to 5 seconds of my demo reel, picked up his phone and said, "Hold all my calls," clicked and listened to the 3-minute demo reel and wanted to sign me. Right. But I
wow.
had already gotten an offer from another agent, or I was about to get an offer from another agent, but they did send me out freelance because they wanted to test me. So there was two other agencies that wanted to sign me. I ended up going with another one, but that was such an affirmation. And it's because I showed up. Had I not shown up, nothing.
Of course. Of
But this
course.
man felt for me for whatever reason, and he knew no one's going to listen to your demo reel. It's like, you need a little help sometimes, you need a little luck. You
Yes.
need, I paid my dues on another way, and that opened the door for this. And I heard that the agent told me, he said, "I don't know what you did to him," but he said he is a 6-figure voiceover announcer. And he said, "I thought you were a family member," the way he was talking.
Unbelievable.
See, it's like
Unbelievable.
gifts like that, again, that you don't forget and keep you going
Hmm.
because it just doesn't happen every day.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
It doesn't. And so it's moments like that that keep you 100% full throttle in what you say you want to do, which is your dream,
Hmm.
you know?
John, after spending so many years working, with voices and coaching people,
Hmm.
have you become able to recognize people's emotions, wounds, or even aspects of their characters simply through hearing their voices?
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's no, but it's not necessarily unique. When you've been in the business a long time and you are involved in the communication, which is what
You're
voiceover is, it's
you're
really
trained.
communication.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mm.
And there's also psychological aspects, of course. And because I've worked on myself for many, many decades, right?
Mm.
There's just a certain awareness psychologically of things. So yeah, I'm really able to pick things out of people and even bring them out where they don't even know it exists,
Mhm.
right? Also I love layered performances and I love being a part of that. So in coaching people, and not necessarily coaching them to imitate me in any way, but to bring out something in themselves and to use that for a character. So in voiceover today, you know,
Mhm.
especially in cartoons. So people, I don't know if they still do, but people used to think of voiceover in terms of cartoons. That's how they could relate to it. And
Yes.
the thing about it is, in today's world, you don't really hear many cartoon voices. Like, you don't want to hear things like that, right? You hear more people's regular voices, but
Mhm.
in the character, right? And the focus is on the acting, not the voice. Believe it or not, in voiceover, the focus is on the acting skill and not the
The
voice. Your
voice,
voice
yes.
tends to be your voice. And when you go
Mhm.
to auditions or when you're sent auditions, it's in your voice type. So that means everyone at the audition is basically going to sound like you. So
Mhm.
who books the job? The one that brings their acting skill and their imagination and how they make the situation exist for them to
Mhm.
step into gets the job. And
Yes.
sometimes in voiceover, when you get the job, sometimes they actually tell you why you got the job, but they're not necessarily knowing they're telling you for information. But they're telling you because they'll say something like, no one did the turn of a phrase that way. No
Mhm.
one kind of gave the flick to the product name that way. No one blah 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 blah. So you finally realize when you get jobs and you're getting this kind of information, you finally get that voice acting is really about subtlety and nuance. It's not about the big character voices. It's really about conversation
Mhm.
and the subtleties and nuances to that. And that is not easy to do while you have a script. And that's why acting is very, very important and improvisation, because the way you want things to work when you're working on a script is you want it to land spontaneously with
Mhm.
nuance and subtlety, where it doesn't sound like you're reading anything. It just sounds like
Of
it's
course.
coming from you
Yes.
right here, right now. And
Yes.
so when you're training for that, it takes something, it takes years. It doesn't mean you won't get work, but it just takes years to focus on that kind of mastery
Mhm.
in the craft,
Yes.
right? And it is a craft.
Of course, it is a craft, and a
Yes.
difficult one.
Yes. You
Yes.
know, I even think, and I don't think acting is easy, okay? But I think it's even a little more challenging, voice acting, than
Mhm.
acting. And that is because in acting, you have the scenery and the costumes, and that informs your character when you have that. Also, when you're
You have your
listening,
face. You have your
yes, when you're
body.
listening and
Yes.
responding, there's your
Yes.
face, responding, you have someone you're doing it with.
Mhm.
In voice acting, you don't necessarily have anyone else in the booth but you, and you have to create from what looks like a monologue in the script. You actually have to create it like dialogue,
Mhm.
yet there's no one else there. So
Yes.
you have to become the scenery, the costume, the dialogue, the other person you're talking to. That has to be implied with how you respond from one line to the next. That ain't easy.
Of course not.
That takes a lot of time and to get some mastery over it. And let me tell you, there are amazing, amazing voice actors. And I mean amazing. So, a lot of times the competition isn't like, it's not set up like, oh, you just broke in. So people that broke in to 2 years, that's their audition. People that have been doing it 3 to 7 years, that's your audition. We're all in the same
Mhm.
room. I actually remember one time. This is when we used to go to auditions live as opposed to once COVID hit. So I remember in the room, Kathleen Turner was on one side and Sally Kellerman, a famous TV actress, but also did voiceover, was on the other. And then everyone else was in the room. But this is what I say about that. If they wanted Kathleen Turner, they would have hired her. There wouldn't have been any audition. If they wanted Sally Kellerman, they would have hired her. There would have been no audition. But
Yes.
obviously they
Yes.
wanted to hear everybody that they
Mhm.
could in that voice type to see who would book the job.
Yes.
Otherwise, they would have hired the celebrity already. They wouldn't have to audition. But in voice acting, it's an even playing field many
Mhm.
times. So Kathleen Turner, Sally Kellerman, oh my God. But you know what? Someone that just broke in could book the job. That's how incredible voice acting is. Someone that just got an agent could also book the job. But
Yes.
again, like I said, there's many, many incredible, astounding people. And a lot of them have been at our event that Rudy and I do annually every year called That's Voiceover. And so, when you do an event and with That's Voiceover, it's been 17 years annually since 2009. But um, how we created it was and
Mhm.
is to this day, it reveals what goes on behind the scenes in voice acting. So everything you see behind the scenes is actually on stage at that's voiceover because still, but back then, no one knew how to navigate. Even people that have been in it a long time have a hard time navigating voiceover. It's a behind the scenes career and not everyone knows how it works. So, it's easy. You get how to become an actor. You get how to become a singer. You get how to become a
Mhm.
dancer. You
Mhm.
have to take years of dance classes, but not everyone knows how to break into voice acting or how it works behind the scenes. So that's how we created That's Voiceover. And That's Voiceover is really based on casting directors and producers, as well as voice actors that are, yes, some of them are celebrity voice actors, but a lot of them are working voice actors.
Mhm.
And they're the voice of this product or the voice of that show. And so we purposely wanted to start with people that were in the know because at the time, no one knew anything about getting in. And yet, if you were in, you still did not understand how to navigate because most people just rely on their agent. They don't realize
Mhm.
the hot pursuit that you have to be in. And actually, your agent is relying on your energy, not the other way around. So there's plenty to learn and there's plenty to be exposed to really understand and to really get a sense for yourself how it could work for you, but also resonate with the things that you see that can, take you to the next level.
Mhm. Tell me something, John, something else. In a world obsessed with image, what does it truly mean to be heard?
I think it's soul releasing to really be heard. I've actually not only experienced it myself, but I see it every year at the Voice Arts Awards.
Mhm.
And the Voice Arts Awards has been the first one was 2013, but we didn't have categories until 2014. And I have experienced every year to the nth degree that being heard is something that people have probably yearned for their whole lives. They may not have coined it that way,
Mhm.
but that's what I'm seeing. When you're heard, you're seen. There's no question about it. You can
No,
be
no,
seen, but
no.
not heard.
They're not heard.
But if
Yes.
you're heard, you're seen. And
Mhm.
I know it's soul freeing. I know it creates so much joy and so much self-love. Not in a conceited way, but so much true, genuine love for yourself
Mhm.
and for what you're about and what you're doing and how you can express yourself in it. That to me is everything. And the kernel or the seed of life
Yeah.
in one's human
Mm.
being life.
You've mentored many performers. So, what do you think? What emotional block do you see holding people back most often?
Wow, what a great question. Well, I think there's two things. One is the non-knowledge of the industry and how it works, and then there's also how it can work for you, right? And I think there's a lot of naivete because, like I said, there is some kind of mechanism in us as human beings and it's a way of protecting yourself, but it's like, I'm special. That may have happened to you or them, but that's not going to happen for me. And yet it happens over and over for everybody, right? And it's not bad. It's not good. It's benign. but it's what you make it
Mm.
mean that makes it good or bad.
Yes.
So I think one of it is the naivete because again, we talked about earlier, like we're not in a corporation where you understand the linear aspect
Mhm.
of being in a corporation. We're in a non-linear industry and a dues paying industry, and there's no rhyme or reason how things show up. You can't always link them to something.
Mhm.
So I think there's that aspect. That's a block, a total block. And I think the other block has to do with people's interpretations about themselves and their talent and and almost like how outside of yourself you feel like you should be served and that all you have to do is show up
Mhm.
and not kind of like not lift a finger or what finger do I have to lift and then I'll just do it. But you don't realize you're it. Your talents and how you in your training and how that shows up for people and your personality and your style, that all accounts for I don't care if you are being heard as in voiceover, it all matters. And
Mhm.
I feel like people don't necessarily have a real clue about that. I think people live in la la land about show business. I mean, it's even called la la land. Like it's called la la land for a reason, but there is that. And I find that people easily get insulted about things that you know, in show business, you hear things like you have to have a tough skin, right?
Mhm.
Well, you have to have to me, a reasonable skin. It really counts if you happen to have, I think, when you have, what's it called? Like, when you're reasonable about things, when you have a sense of purpose and you have a sense of, not seeing things that have to always go your way no matter what, and that means it's bad. Like, you have to have common sense. That's what I was
Common
saying.
sense.
Common sense and objectivity, not subjectivity. And I think most of the problems come from being subjective and not objective. That's what I think.
Yeah, but as we said before, it's hard to be objective
No, it
sometimes
is.
because it,
It is. That's why it's important to have support or some kind of guidance, some kind of therapeutic, kind of witness that can help you not see it in a negative way towards yourself,
Mhm.
but in a way that, again, you have to show up. I have to show up 100% full throttle for things to activate and move. And if there's obstacles to that, then how I need to deal with that
Mhm.
and not blame them or the industry or um, I thought I thought I'd get the job because I knew the guy or whatever it is. Like you really have to have common sense, I think, like a heavy dose of it. And if you do, you will have a thick skin if you want to call it that
Yeah, but I've
because
also,
you're objective.
yes, but I've seen and the opposite thing happening, to many of us, including myself, like blaming yourself for not getting the job or being rejected.
Yeah, coming from a person, me, that has dealt with all kinds of rejections
Mm.
and all kinds of flimsy and bizarre explanations why I'm being rejected, right? I have literally had to work on my own self-rejection.
Mm.
And once again, I focused in on my issue around rejection. It it not only did my mind or my thoughts change around it or my philosophy changed around it, but to me, it seemed to be the truth. Once I zeroed in on my issue
Mhm.
and could articulate it and coin it and have a conversation around it, that's when it kind of let go on its own accord. You know, me
You've said
letting,
at an interview that miracles happen in conversation.
yes, they do. Yes,
And
they
I
do.
thought that was
Miracles
amazing.
happen in conversation. That's how miracles happen. That's why I mentioned earlier when I said I had the conversation with the guy in the elevator that ended up getting me not an appointment with his agent.
Uh-huh.
Had we not had that conversation, that miracle would not have happened. And that's something I've noticed around miracles because I have looked at these things. When I told you in my 20s I cry, I these were the things I was thinking about and
Yes.
trying to break through transformation, miracles, these for me are buzzwords because they mean something to me. It's not
Uh-huh.
just kind of like fantasy talk. So yes, miracles happen in conversation. And when you realize that, you're no longer afraid of being around people. You're no longer afraid of being yourself around people. And you're not trying to get anything from anyone. Just miracles happen through conversation. That's how they start.
Um, mm,
Right. I wasn't trying to get a damn thing from that man. I didn't even know who he was. Right.
yes.
But a miracle happened.
John, one thing I genuinely feel, after listening to your interviews and learning about your journey, is how deeply you seem to love people and believe in human potential. And I really find that amazing because, you've experienced so much criticism and judgment
Yeah.
and mistreatment. So how do you think you managed, to keep your heart open instead of becoming hardened by those experiences?
I can say this. It's almost like every bone in my body resisted feeling bitter or upset. And I really rely on my joy and love of people. I have really come to utilize that aspect of myself. And it really has taken me for a ride because honestly, if I didn't love people and like you said, their potential,
Uh-huh.
including myself, I honestly, like I even told Rudy, I would have been in jail or I would have died because I would have been so upset, bitter, angry, rageful against life and people. Because even though I feel like our interview has been, in depth, there are so many things I could say that would have you go, wow, and she's not bitter. So, um,
I can
there's
imagine,
so
John.
many.
I can
It's like
imagine.
endless. Again, society misunderstands race and other things too, but definitely race is one of them. And it still happens, it's happening today. And
Uh-huh.
full throttle, just it's showing up in a different way, but it's still the same. It's still the same pain, right? So there's always a constant kind of fight the power here. And so I've gotten used to and I've gotten a lot of musculature around it. And at the same time, I look at myself and what I'm bringing to the table.
Uh-huh.
And then I really work on that. And again, it's freeing. It lets go. I'm not even trying to let go. It just does as a byproduct of me looking deeper at myself. So again, I rely on that on the transformational healing
Uh-huh.
aspect.
Mhm.
I also rely on the fact how much I love people and want to give back to life. And that's what I lean on. I'm not saying I never get angry. God knows I do about things. I absolutely do. But again, it all always boils down to what is the lesson? How can I articulate it that it totally resonates? So I'm able to work with it and choose differently.
Uh-huh.
But I can't
Yes.
choose differently if I can't articulate what's going on for me and um, life's lessons.
Mhm. So as you know, I had the honor of speaking with your husband, Rudy
Oh, that was
Gaskins.
I'll
Yeah.
tell you, Anna, that was an extraordinary interview. And you I just think you're someone that you're able to tap into people's hearts
I
and
love people, John.
feels.
I really love people.
It shows. It shows, and it's so beautiful, and honestly, when I said, which I did on social media, "You are my favorite
Ah,
host and podcast," I was not kidding because I love
so
what
honored.
you're bringing to the table,
Thank you so much,
and
John.
there's nothing like it, Anna. Thank you.
You know, I've said that before, but through those conversations, because I'm not a journalist, I'm an actress as well. So I really
Mhm,
enjoy these conversations, but I'm trying to find pieces of myself. You know,
mhm,
I love exploring other people's journeys through life because
yeah.
you find parts of yourself
You
in their
do,
stories. You
you do.
understand yourself better.
It's true. There's
You know,
something that you never know, again, in conversation, what creates miracles. You never know
Ye-
what's going to trigger something in your mind and open it up where it was once closed. Miracles happen through conversation.
yeah,
You
and I
got that.
truly believe that we are all connected. We are
Yes.
all connected
Yes.
energetically.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Energetically. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're all different
So,
levels in life and have
yeah,
different issues and have different ways of thinking of them and a different temperament. And, in some ways, it truly makes life fascinating. And in other ways, it makes life frustrating.
a lot, and many
Right.
times.
Right.
So, what I feel from both of you, you and Rudy, is genuine love for people and artists. So through
Hmm.
SOVAS, you've
Hmm.
created, more than an organization, a community, I would say. So I wanted to ask you, what does building that together, with Rudy
Uh-huh.
mean to you personally?
I think when I used to daydream about a relationship, I wouldn't even allow myself to create what Rudy and I have. I didn't even think it existed, to really have a partner that you could create from the creative industry or
Hmm.
from showbiz industry. Like that was so beyond. I just would never even allow myself, let alone really dream like that. I could barely get a date Saturday night half the time. You know what I mean? So I would
Yes.
never I would never dare to dream
Uh-huh.
what has happened between me and Rudy. And by the way, it's not like we met and thought, okay, let's create. It's like it happened kind of like over time, over a long
Mhm.
period of time until we realized we are actually really great partners, and when we first met, we did go into business right away. I was already teaching voice acting at a school, at a casting office and at a school. And so Rudy came in to watch and he said, I'd love to join you. I was like, wow, really? So we created kind of a school. And it was for voice acting. It was the actress perspective and it was the director's perspective in
Mhm.
one. That was very successful. We called it Peter Piper Productions, as in Peter Piper, Pickle Peppers, right? And it was very successful. We did it for about a year, and then it just moved from that point. So it happened out of Rudy seeing how he could create an impact that would make my teaching stronger. And
Mhm.
and he's a natural teacher. So it just really worked out. I'm telling you, it was very, very special. And again, no one was doing that, at least not in New York. So it was very unique and it worked incredibly well. But it was that seed that was planted that we realized, wow, we make great partners. I mean, outside of relationship in business, we really make great partners. And it's a great dynamic. By the
Mhm.
way, I had always been told, like, if I went to a psychic or I went to, a healer type that was psychic or intuitive, I was always told, this is before I met Rudy, that I was going to meet my soulmate through show business and that there would be a great partnership that would develop like none other. I just thought, "Oh, yeah, right." Like, I didn't really believe it. Again, I wouldn't allow myself to ever think that way. I did not have great luck with men until I met Rudy, even though I had dates, I had boyfriends and all that, and they were all great people. It just never went far, right? So I just am so like grateful and appreciative, but also I couldn't even dream. And what it feels like is a great sense of healing and a great sense of deeply knowing, connecting, even encouraging people's expression, their heart, their soul, their joy. And there is no feeling like that in the world in being a collaborator with other people in what their dreams are.
Yes,
And I realized, like 20 years ago or so, I realized that my mission in life is dreams fulfilled. Not just my dreams, but everyone else's dreams that come in my contact.
that's
And I
beautiful.
don't know why it's always been there for me, but it has. And so this is a platform that exactly does that. SOVAS, dreams fulfilled. There is nothing else like it. I just never imagined it would manifest like this also with a partner like Rudy, who is absolutely, trust me, a genius.
I'm sure he's.
He is.
I'm sure he's.
I've always been attracted to geniuses. I didn't realize that my soulmate would be a genius, but he is. There's no question about it.
John, my last question is, after all these interviews you've done throughout your life, is there a question you secretly wish someone would ask you?
Oh my God, Hannah. Probably yes, but it changes and varies from time to time. Um, but that probably is very true. Like, oh, I wish they'd ask me about whatever it may be. What would it be now?
What
Um,
would you ask yourself?
yeah.
Give me the last question.
God, that is so good. Um, what is it? What is it to be unstoppable in your life?
Oh, so what is
That's
it, John? I really want to know.
what it is to be unstoppable in your life
Hmm.
is to focus on the blocks and barriers that would keep you from your dreams coming true. That will make you unstoppable. It has nothing to do with anybody, but what is stopping you from preventing that to flourish?
Mm. From self-sabotaging.
Yeah. And
Mm.
and also obviously some things you're just not aware of.
Uh-huh.
It's it's what you don't know that you don't know. That's where you want to get to.
It's
Not
those
what you
beliefs that you
know.
don't know you believe. Yeah.
Exactly. And when you do that, it makes you unstoppable. Now,
Mm.
for example, I'll give you an example. Uncovering the fact, this is just one of many, but uncovering the fact that I am about dreams fulfilled, I'm telling you, brought great clarity to me. Great clarity when you really understand yourself. And again, what you don't know that you don't know. And that's something
Uh-huh.
I did
Uh-huh.
not know, but somehow, again, through healing work or whatever, it came to me and clearly. And I thought, it's a miracle because backtrack when I was little and all I loved was those award shows, never dreaming I would ever have one. And also dreaming and seeing when people were so ecstatically happy about being fulfilled around their craft and around, the people that supported them that could get them to that point.
Uh-huh.
I realized, 20 years ago, that's really what my mission is if I was to boil it down. And I didn't know that. And once I got that, I'm telling you, it changed a lot. of things,
Mm.
as you can see. It really did. I was much more conscious and aware, and it really helped to be unstoppable.
Joan, thank you so, so much for being here.
It is
It
such a
was
joy being with you, Anna. And also, when you told me you were in Greece, I was like, "Oh, I went there once as a teenager and I
you have
told you,
to
like,
come
on a
back.
cruise as part of a student exchange program, and it was a 5-week program, but I spent a week around Crete, Rhodes, um, can't re there was 5 islands. I don't remember the other ones, but I ended up in Athens. That's where that part of the, tour ended. And I'm telling you, I loved it. I loved it. I loved the history. I loved the people, the food, just everything was just overwhelming in such a joyful way. But when you told me you were in Greece, it literally, like, every memory came
So you
smashing
have to
back.
come again.
I absolutely plan on it. I almost did too last year, but I absolutely plan on it. And I where are you in Greece?
Athens.
No. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm absolutely both Rudy and I are
Come
absolutely gonna
on, come
see.
on.
Okay. But thank you for this. I think, Anna, that you are a very powerful person and a very humble one, and one that really truly understands listening. And at the same time, asking the kind of questions that really make you have to think about your life, really think about it. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much, John. It was an honor, truly.
It was.
And to all of you out there, as we always say, ego was here, you were here, and that's enough.